all, and welcome to Founder's Secrets to Hypergrowth. So, Christina, welcome to Europe. You made the trip over here from the US. We appreciate you doing so.
Glad to be here.
On our first secret, we've 5 to get through in 15 minutes, so why don't we move right in?
Great.
So, build it and they will come is a great movie line, but not always great for hypergrowth. For the uninitiated, the phrase, build it and they will come, is from a 1980s movie, Field of Dreams. Kevin Costner, updating myself, I remember seeing it as a kid. But in practicality of building something that customers actually want, you believe this is more of a myth than a reality. Tell me why.
I do. So earlier in my career, I especially in kind of learning how to code and make things on the internet and build products, I built a ton of stuff that I thought was, brilliant, that turned out no one wanted at all. And I did that a couple times because I kept thinking like my next idea was better. And, I think that's also a lot of the myth and lore of startups is, literally and figuratively, like Mark Zuckerberg, went to his dorm room at Harvard and coded this thing that now, billions of people use. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of how I thought it worked. And after not getting that to work many, many, many times, I got to a point where I was like, no, I'm not, I'm not Mark Zuckerberg. I'm not, whatever enough to be able to just have this idea and build it and it merge and, a billion people want it. I've got to build things with customers. And that's, asking people about their problems and what might solve them. That's like Wizard of Oz prototyping, so figuring out how to test an idea without coding it. It's actually showing people things I'm building as I'm building them. And that's the process that Vanta went through. And so, kind of very biased, but I feel like I have like a dozen examples of ways where I sort of went into a room and emerged with a product that no one wanted. And then Vanta is one example where I didn't do that. And it is now something that still seems like people want, which is great.
They do indeed. I can attest to it. I see it all the time in Europe. Secret 2, love spending time with your customers more than you love your own idea. So the question I have is, you don't have a background in security, yet you founded a security company. How did who you were building for factor into what you ended up building in the end?
Yeah, so I think kind of related in kind of who building for, I just found that I actually really liked kind of hanging out, literally, figuratively, work context with security folks. And so one of the early conversations in, what's now Vanta was with someone on the product security team at Dropbox, where I had worked most previously. I basically emailed this person and said, hey, can you invite me over to breakfast when Dropbox has nice breakfasts? And can I ask you a lot of questions about your job? And this person agreed and was very kind. And one of the things I still remember from this conversation, which was probably in like spring of 2017, was I had them pull out their phone and say, okay, look at your calendar, your like work calendar for the last week. Just like page through it, like remember what you did. What was like your favorite part of last week? And what was your least favorite part of last week? And that was really helpful in just like helping me empathize with this person, right? Who I never had this job, I had a different background, I kind of knew what they did, like I could have read their calendar, but I didn't understand all the nuance to it. And that person's answer, their best part of their week was working with product teams, helping secure products that Dropbox was building. And their least favorite part of their week was like doing all this reporting for customers or auditors or the board, showing that they had like secured stuff, basically. And in what became Vanta, this was actually really powerful, right? Because you're like, okay, the person loves securing things, and then gives this equal part of their job, which is telling people they've secured things that they dislike. And that, in some ways, as Vanta couples those two things, and it came out of this conversation with someone who's also just like kind of fun to spend time with and be curious about. Mm-hmm.
Good. Vanta is also known for bootstrapping, right? Much of its early work and has been conservative both on when and how you accessed funding in the early days. When you think about solving the hard challenges for customers and the levers to pull, why isn't cash always king for you?
Yeah, I think when you're building a startup, and whether it's, you're 2 people or 20 people or 200 people. I think the only like common thread is you have many problems / many opportunities. And I think it was really helpful for us to be clear about which problems we thought cash could solve and which couldn't. And there was this whole phase for the first couple of years where it felt like, again, we had many problems we were trying to solve, but like they weren't really ones that more money would help. So it's like a concrete example. We were powered by word of mouth, a lot of word of mouth in the early days. And so we didn't really have this problem of, hey, let's go spend more money on Google Ads. I mean, we maybe could have, but actually our major problem was we were not able to onboard customers well enough, part because honestly, we just didn't invest early enough in customer success, right? And yes, more money maybe would have helped us hire better customers or more customer success people. But I think our problem was actually more fundamental. It was that we didn't understand what customer success could be and the role it could play for customers, right? And so again, like, would money have helped us? I think we could have maybe onboarded customers faster, grown slightly faster, but I think it would have come at the cost of customer experience and kind of destroying some of that word of mouth, honestly, right? Because we were still trying to figure out, okay, post-sale, what are you supposed to do? And because we came from more of a product building background, the product just does it answer is the one that it seemed like should have been right, but we just weren't at a stage or maturity where that was true. And so anyway, really diving into that post-sale process with an eye to customer experience was, I think, actually the most important problem to solve. And then once we had that, then you're like, oh, great, we'd love more leads, we'd love more new customers, we'd love more, hiring brand in the marketplace that taking investment brings. But first, you kind of got to know, right? We had to know, like, what customer experience did we want? What roles and responsibilities would help us get there?
And I can see much of this in the investment decisions you make in Europe today as well. So it definitely benefiting us. So 3 secrets down, secret 4 and 5 to go. Secret 4, the customer you have today is hopefully not the customer you have tomorrow. So like many of the attendees here at SaaStr, Vanta's early customer base, and still is substantial actually today, is startups, right? How do you think about not just serving the customers you have today, but also building for the customers tomorrow and beyond?
Yeah, it's a tough balance, I think, because, so in Vanta's case in particular, we very much started by serving other startup founders. We still very much do, and that is kind of the core and the foundation of the business. And in the early days, I think it was a little, maybe more second nature because it was serving people like us that we knew, that we literally had on iMessage or like shared Slack, right, and could go ask them questions all the time. As Vanta has grown and as many kind of B2B SaaS companies grow, right, you serve a more upmarket user, a more specified user, so it's not a startup founder. In our case, it's a security and compliance persona. And I think it's kind of going back to those original principles that served you so well, just being a little more conscious about them, right? So it's like, how do we kind of go find security and compliance people and convince them to hang out with us, right? And maybe it's now in the more formal structure of a customer advisory board, right? Or something like that. It's not, your former roommate's new housewarming or something in San Francisco. But it's still kind of the same action. And I think also, hopefully, right, if you're a business serving startups, part of the magic of that business model, and like we've learned this as an industry over the last decade, is that your customers are growing too, right? And some of these startups are growing, and what was like a plucky group of 2 or 3 founders a couple of years ago is now this growing, scaling behemoth, right? And so hopefully those startup customers too are also pushing you and pushing you on product, and they want, more maturity, more features, deeper use cases, all of that. And this is something we've been trying to kind of strike a balance with at Vanta, and the way we're doing it currently is, still, again, I think startups are just our core and our foundation and still very important to me. That is not something we are or will abandon. At the same time, some of them have grown, we're attracting larger companies. And so our product development teams are building to that end. We also acquired actually a startup in January of this year called TrustPage, which is kind of adjacent to us, a product, like security status page product, so helping your teams get credit for all the security work you're doing with customers, helping deflect security questionnaires. And that was just a team that was building for a more upmarket audience, and so it's a really nice complement to a lot of the Vantans and Vanta folks who are just like much more attuned to a startup audience, and so it's that complementarity that I think hopefully will serve us well, united around a shared customer.
Great. Okay, secret 5, and the final secret that we have for the audience today. Turn trust into your competitive advantage. So this is something that became very obvious to me actually when I joined Vanta, but not something I always thought about beforehand. At Vanta, we talk a lot about trust, from building trust with vendors that you work with, to winning new deals by demonstrating your trustworthiness, right? Why is trust the ultimate competitive advantage for hitting hypergrowth as an organization?
Yeah, so we think about this, I mean, in some ways very, very simply, but just that for Vanta, like if we're in kind of the business of trust and the business of helping our customers be trusted to their customers, right? Be secure, be compliant, be trustworthy. If we want to help companies do that and we're not trustworthy, it's like game over. We should all, pack our bags and go home, right? And so we have a set of operating principles at Vanta, and first among equals kind of is do what it says on the tin, which is our way internally of saying, hey, again, if you like imagine a cookie tin, right? Just do what it says on the tin, like do what you say you're gonna do. And we have that both cases. We have that, internally with ourselves, with partners, and then again, that is what we try to do on behalf of customers. And just to that point, part of the founding story of Vanta was spending time with security folks, right? We kind of talked about, they really like securing things. They tend to generally less like having to explain how they've secured things to other non-technical folks. But the reason that is such an important part of their job is because it drives business, right? You can imagine, going to a bigger company and saying, hey, we're really on top of it. We take customer data seriously. Here's all the things we've done, right? And that opening up a new deal or a new industry segment, having that conversation with the board or with like prospective investors and kind of helping that be part of the pitch for another investment round. It's so important. Right? And that just seemed kind of, as we, again, spent time with security folks and spent time with our customers, seemed very important. But surprisingly, like, undervalued, but just no one had kind of coupled the, like, hey, go be secure and then go build trust on it or go prove that or go use that. Take all that good engineering work and IT work and systems work and use it to grow the business with the go-to-market teams. And I think if you go poll, a bunch of Vanta customers, they would generally say that it's both pieces. Like, yes, we are now baseline more secure and more reasonable. And the reason we prioritize that work is because it grew our business. And we're actually seeing that trust in security posture, again, open new markets, close new deals, let us move up market. And so it's this really powerful incentive and motivator that we try to harness around our mission of securing the internet. Mm-hmm.
And likely more important today than it's ever been and will be again in the future, right?
Yeah, and I mean, it's just like we have like generally less trust in software and software companies mm-hmm. and the big tech behemoths. And some of that is reasonable, but as someone who like believes in the transformative power of software, I think some software I would like to be trusted or software that is worthy of that. And hopefully that is in fact helpful.
Absolutely. I've seen it day to day. So these are the 5 secrets. I hope you found it valuable today to listen to it. By the way, Christina, you will be at our booth.
I will be.
Right? If anybody wants to have a quick chat and catch up with you. That's booth number 301. We'll probably head there, I think, in the next 10 minutes, after. And thank you so much for attending. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Andrew.
Thank you.